Since the very end of May 2022, thousands of people have been invested in the disappearance of Dylan Rounds. As weeks turned into months, it became clear that Dylan would not be returning to his farm in Lucin, Utah, alive. With little help from the police, Dylan's parents made it their mission to figure out what happened to their son and who was responsible. Finally, at the beginning of March 2023, over 9 months since Dylan first went missing, charges were filed against one of the men that most people suspected all along, James Brenner. This case captured so many people's attention because in the beginning, it truly was like a real-life, horrific game of Clue. Rumors went around about residents of the remote area, and the bizarre circumstances led to a list of possible suspects with various potential motives and ways of committing the crime. However, the simplest solution is often the correct one, and that seems to be the case here as well. While most of us following this case probably expected James Brenner to be the culprit, I can almost guarantee that the evidence against him in newly released documents will absolutely shock you. Hey guys, I'm Elise, this is 10 to Life, and let's dive right in. I'm sure by now most of you are very familiar with Dylan Rounds, but if you're not, you should definitely go watch my videos about this case from the very beginning. It was an absolute whirlwind getting to where we are now, and it sometimes felt like there would never be anybody charged or held responsible for what happened to Dylan. I'm going to give you guys a quick summary of the case, just to refresh everyone on what took place up until this point, and then I will discuss all of the new information that has come out over the last few days. 19-year-old Dylan Rounds was living his lifelong dream of having his very own farm. In Lucin, Utah, which is near the border of Nevada, this desert-like land was relatively cheap, and it was affordable enough for Dylan to be able to purchase it with some help from his grandparents. The land would require a huge amount of time and effort to get to the point of actually being able to produce a crop. But Dylan did not shy away from hard work, and he moved an RV onto his land that he could live in while he farmed. Dylan had his own large seed truck and some machinery, and a few miles away, a neighboring landowner had a shed where Dylan was given permission to park his truck in case of the rain. Even though the seeds in the back of Dylan's truck were covered by a tarp, he couldn't risk them getting wet or damp at all because it would prematurely cause them to sprout, possibly mold, and essentially become unusable. So early in the morning on Saturday, May 28, 2022, Dylan spoke to his grandmother on the phone and told her that it was going to rain that day, and he needed to hurry and get his seed truck into that grain shed a few miles away so that he was going to have to call her later, but he had to get these seeds covered. Dylan was very close with his grandparents and with his parents and would talk to at least one of them on the phone every single day. So the next day, when Dylan still hadn't called his grandmother back, she started to get a bit worried. She called a family friend who used to help Dylan on his farm named Don to find out if he had heard from Dylan or seen Dylan anywhere. But when Don said he had not, she asked that he go and check on him. On the grain shed property, a man named James Brenner was squatting or living there illegally, even though there had been claims that he had permission to live there. Now, James also helped Dylan on the farm in the past as well, so he and Dawn supposedly both went to go and look for Dylan when his grandmother said she hadn't heard from him. By Monday, Dawn and James reported to Dylan's grandmother that they still had not heard from him, so she called Dylan's best friend, who then called Candace Cooley, Dylan's mother. Candace called her ex-husband immediately, Dylan's father, named Justin Rounds, and they both headed from their homes in Idaho to Lucin to see what was going on with their son and where he was. On their way to Dylan's farm, they called the police to file a missing persons report on Dylan. When they arrived, Dylan's aunt went inside his RV to clean up the bathroom for his grandmother to use, and she didn't notice anything on the sink counter. But days later, somebody had placed one of Dylan's missing guns there. seemingly by sneaking it back in overnight when nobody was around. Dylan's truck was parked outside of his RV, but they were unable to locate his key fob. Even though the truck was a potential crime scene, Candace and Justin were given permission by the Box Elder police to break out a window to see if they could find any clues, like his phone or his wallet. Nothing was found in the truck, but Candace did notice that Dylan's seat was pushed up further than where Dylan normally would have kept it to drive. And she also noticed that the truck had been pressure washed, besides a bit of mud left behind in the tire wells. This would have meant that the truck was driven after the rain that day, and also seemed pretty sketchy because Dylan supposedly never washed his truck. He definitely wouldn't have done so after it had just rained with sloshy mud everywhere. Then, like the gun, days later, that missing key fob was also returned to the RV as well. The family made their way over to the grain shed where Dylan had told his grandmother he was going to be going. And to their horror, they found his boots tossed behind a huge dirt pile several yards away from the shed. There was a dark spot on the boots that looked like it could be blood, and Dylan's parents immediately knew that something bad had happened to their son, who would never go anywhere normally without his boots. The Box Elder County Police, who later arrived on the scene to aid in the search, placed the boots in a police cruiser to be tested for DNA. But it was later found out that the boots had stayed in there for days before being packaged correctly as a piece of evidence should be and sent for testing. Now, at the beginning of this initial investigation, police sitting outside of the grain shed where Dylan parked his seed truck saw James Brenner cleaning out and removing some trash bags from the shed. But for whatever reason, they decided not to question or stop him from doing so.
Brenner pulled the grain truck out on his own and cleaned it.
Was cleaning the shed with
Cleaning
the law
the
enforcement
shed,
there,
watching
with us
him.
there.
Said they can't do anything. I seen him take out take out 4 garbage bags and put them in the back of his pickup. Now, you'll see when the Diesel Brothers interviews released, we did the interview from inside the shed. Trust me, he wasn't cleaning up garbage. It is full of his beer cans and garbage. Whatever he took out in those bags was to hide what he did.
Right under law enforcement's
right under
nose
their
and
nose.
our nose.
During the search, tire tracks matching Dylan's truck tires were also found in what's called a wash, where James has actually joked in the past about being a good place to hide a body. In this wash, when it rains, thousands of pounds of dirt slough off the sides and would cover up anything thrown inside of it. During this time, Candace had taken to social media to get her son's face out there and to try to get assistance in searching for Dylan, because the Box Elder Police Department wasn't taking his disappearance seriously at all or helping the family very much at all. Many YouTubers started reporting on the case, and several possible suspects were ultimately ruled out before everybody began focusing in on James Brenner. 59-year-old James has an extremely violent past and actually had another warrant out for his arrest during the time for assaulting a man with a chair. The family was able to get Dylan's phone records and could see pings of him going to the grain shed area near James' RV, then back to Dylan's RV and to the nearby Lucin Pond. This led people to believe that when Dylan went to take his seed truck to that grain shed, he had a run-in with James, who has been very territorial over that land in the past. It was thought that James, who is also a severe alcoholic, could have maybe been drunk or just being a violent jerk and confronted Dylan and killed him during an altercation. He could have possibly used a gun that he later asked his buddy Don to conceal for him. Then Don would have driven Dylan's truck to dispose of him somewhere, took his phone, disposed of it maybe in the pond, and then dropped Dylan's truck back off by the RV. He also may have stolen Dylan's gun during that time, which would explain him sneaking back in and replacing it in the RV when nobody was around, along with that key fob that he had used to drive Dylan's truck.
Since we last talked, the Box Elder Sheriffs has said this is now a criminal investigation.
Correct.
What does that mean to you all?
It's terrible. It's terrifying, but it's also got us the help we need.
Yeah, finally. We got the FBI's got involved. It feels like something's going to happen now. With Box Elder, it didn't feel like anything was happening. I don't know what they were doing, but yeah, it's...
In late June, James was arrested on gun charges after Dawn told police about James requesting for him to conceal his guns at his home.
A suspect has been arrested in the search for Dylan Rounds. Box Elder County authorities received information from a person of interest who lives in Lucin, Utah, where Dylan lived. The person of interest told deputies that after Dylan went missing, James Brenner gave him firearms to, quote, hold on to due to past experiences with law enforcement. Brenner is a convicted felon, and police previously searched his home and found gunpowder and ammunition. They took him into custody on weapons charges. He is now being held without bail.
Although there wasn't enough evidence to charge James with anything related to Dylan's disappearance, everybody felt relieved that he was in custody, so that if he could be charged in the future, he wouldn't be able to run or hide or dispose of any more evidence than he already had. And that day finally came on Friday, March 3rd, 2023, when James Brenner was formally charged with the murder of 19-year-old Dylan Rounds. Even with the circumstantial evidence alone, it was pretty obvious that James was responsible. But the new evidence that we're going to discuss, in my opinion, leaves absolutely no room for any doubt.
Now, after a 9-month investigation, a suspect has been charged with the murder of 19-year-old Dylan Rounds, who went missing near Lucin, Utah, a small town near the Nevada-Utah border. Fox 13 News reporter Darian DeBrule spoke with Dylan Rounds' mother about how she's feeling now.
This is a huge win for Dylan. This is huge. This is what we have been fighting for 9 months.
It's been over 9 months since Candace Cooley's son, Dylan Rounds, was last seen on his farm in Lucin, Utah.
Dylan was living his dream. Dylan was a 19-year-old that is unlike so many others. He was so giving, and he was so passionate about what he did.
So before I tell you my thoughts, I want to go ahead and discuss and read to you the documents that were released over the weekend, discuss what everything means and what will probably happen going forward from here. The first document is a press release from the Box Elder Police Department. I know I'm sure we're all probably shocked to see Box Elder actually putting something out regarding Dylan, since they have been pretty much radio silent this entire time, but nonetheless, here is what they stated in the press release. On March 3rd, 2023, the Box Elder County's Attorney's Office filed criminal charges with the 1st District Court in Box Elder County, all in connection with the investigation of the disappearance of Dylan Rounds. James Brenner was formally charged with aggravated murder, a first-degree felony, and abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony, for the murder of Dylan Rounds and the disposal of his body. These charges come after a difficult and extensive 9-month investigation by the Box Elder County Sheriff's Office, and they are supported by the information that has been gathered and evidence collected. The evidence supports that James Brenner is the only suspect. Although the remains of Dylan Rounds have yet to be located, we are hopeful that they will be found in the future. We express our condolences to the family of Dylan Rounds. And then it goes on to thank the people who have been involved in the case, starting with Dylan's family, who of course have been the lead in their own son's investigation. And honestly, they found the majority of the evidence that they are referring to. So there we see that James is charged with first-degree murder and the desecration of a human body, meaning that he was the one to get rid of or hide Dylan. I do find it very interesting that they say that the evidence supports that James is the only one involved, but we are going to talk about that in a little bit here. Next, I'm going to read the probable cause statement that lets us know what evidence they have that led to getting a warrant for his arrest. This is where the most interesting information comes into play, and a lot of new details that we didn't know before, and I believe some that Dylan's parents weren't even aware of until now. So first, it explains each charge and what each of them mean. So it breaks it down, showing that he is of course in custody, and then it says, the undersigned as prosecuting attorney states on information and belief that the above named defendant, James Brenner, in Box Elder County, state of Utah, committed the following crimes: count 1 of aggravated murder, which is a first-degree felony in violation of Utah's code, and it gives you the penal code. And it says that on or about May 28, 2022, the defendant did intentionally or knowingly cause the death of another. It goes on to talk about the jurisdiction and things about committing the violation of a crime listed and what it means if the crime was committed in Utah. So I believe that that means that he may have crossed state lines, like possibly killed Dylan in Utah and then drove to a neighboring state to dispose of him. Now, guys, this is just my opinion. I am not a legal expert by any means, but I think what it's saying is that if he had committed one of these crimes elsewhere, then it would still be a crime under Utah law as well. Next is count 2, which is abuse or desecration of a human body, a third-degree felony in violation of the Utah code, and then it states the penal code. And it says that on or about May 28, 2022, the defendant did intentionally and unlawfully disturb, move, remove, conceal, or destroy a dead human body or any part of it. It goes on to say, this information is based on evidence obtained from Detective Zachary Richard Moore, dated on this 3rd day of March 2023. Okay, and the next statement of the evidence that they actually found and were able to use against James is wild. So I'm going to try and just read the whole thing first, and then I will tell you what I think, because there are some statements in here that are a little iffy. So it says, factual basis / probable cause statement. The 19-year-old victim was reported as a missing person on or about May 30th, 2022. Sheriff deputies, along with search and rescue crews, immediately got to work on efforts to locate the victim, but they were unsuccessful. During the search, deputies discovered a pair of boots belonging to the victim nearby. One boot had a blood stain that the DNA analysis confirmed belonged to the victim, in addition to DNA belonging to the defendant. The victim's phone records were also obtained, which showed movements on the day of his disappearance on a remote property in Lucin where the defendant was squatting. Phone data showed that the last signal from the victim's phone was at the Lucin pond, and a search of the pond led to the discovery of the victim's phone. A digital forensic download of the phone was conducted and led to the discovery of a time-lapse video with a timestamp taken at the time of the victim's disappearance. The video showed the defendant with bloodstains on his arms and shirt as he is cleaning a gun. The shirt, which the defendant is wearing in the video, was analyzed, and the victim's DNA was found on the shirt. The defendant was interviewed and made several claims that corroborated forensic evidence in addition to making numerous false statements. Despite a thorough investigation and extensive search, the victim's body was not recovered due to the defendant removing and concealing it. Now, I don't know about you guys, but all I can say is holy crap. That is insane. So let's go through it. First of all, we know that Box Elder did not immediately get to work on anything. They did a very basic, nonchalant search that first day after taking their sweet time to get there. And then after that, Dylan's mom and dad, Candace and Justin, were pretty much left to their own devices and had to beg for any assistance. Also, I am pretty positive that deputies did not find the boots behind the dirt pile. If I remember correctly, Candace said that the family found the boots. So I'm not sure if Box Elder is just trying to make themselves look better in this statement, or if they have to say that they are the ones who found that evidence for legal reasons or what, but I think it's definitely a stretch to say, oh yeah, we got right to work. We're the ones that cracked this case wide open from the beginning. I'm not buying it. Sorry, I'm going to be petty here for a minute, guys, but if you've watched all those previous videos that I've done on this case, you understand why I'm acting this way. Now, the next part about the boots. We originally knew about the dark spot and then later found out that it was Dylan's blood. But here we find out that there was actually DNA of James Brenner on the boots as well. Maybe that means blood or just some type of skin cells, but I do remember James later admitting to finding Dylan's boots and chucking them back behind the dirt pile. I kind of hope that it's blood or something more than just a skin cell, because his defense could argue that skin DNA was left behind from when he admitted to finding and moving the boots. And then getting into the phone records, we knew that there was a ping that showed Dylan arriving at the grain shed area, which the document refers to as the remote property in Lucin where the defendant was squatting. And then there was one last ping at the Lucin pond. In a video by Nate Eaton with East Idaho News, he said that a few months ago, he was told off the record by Candace and Justin that the Lucin pond was drained and that Dylan's phone was found at the bottom of the pond, like the document says. Amazingly, even though it was underwater for months, they were able to do a forensic download of the phone, which produced this monumental video. Now, when I read that part, I was blown away. How rare and lucky is it to actually get video of someone in the midst of committing a crime? They made sure to specify that the video was time-stamped, which proves that it was taken around the time that Dylan went missing, and that it also showed James covered in blood cleaning a gun, which in my opinion is going to be the smoking gun, no pun intended. Not only did they have that, but the shirt that James was wearing in the video was tested and it had Dylan's DNA on it. I mean, if that is all the evidence they have, I think that alone is enough for a solid case. But Nate Eaton mentioned in his video that they don't have to release all of their evidence in the probable cause statement, just enough to show a judge why this person should be arrested. So they more than likely have even more evidence that they are going to save for trial. And I have a feeling that there is a lot more on that video than just James Brenner cleaning the gun. I also think it's very interesting that it's a time-lapse video. And if you aren't familiar with what a time-lapse video is, basically it's a setting on an iPhone, and I'm sure other video phone or other phones can do this, but you press time-lapse and you can prop it up, say for 20 minutes, and it records the full 20 minutes, but it does it in a sped up motion. So for example, I have done one of these before with a sunrise back when I lived in New York. I propped it up so you could see the buildings, and then it was dark, completely pitch black outside. The sun goes up, and then it's, 7 a.m. It's bright and sunny everywhere. That 20 or 30 minutes is condensed into maybe a 1 or 2 minute video, but you do have the ability to hold the phone and slow it down to so it's not sped up so that you can see the details. So my guess, I can't imagine that a time lapse was done intentionally as to document this crime, but my guess maybe is that when he was getting ready to dispose of the phone and as he was moving things, he may have accidentally hit time lapse and it caught the whole thing, which, I mean, the luck, I don't even want to use the word luck. It's like divine intervention, serendipity. I don't even know what you would call it, but chef's kiss on that. And I wonder what else is on that video. And I do think that the video is definitely the most damning evidence, but I am so curious to learn how it was even captured. Because another possibility, other than perhaps James accidentally hitting it, did Dylan start filming when he arrived at the green shed because he knew that there might be a confrontation with James? And if that's the case, then the video would really have had to been filming for a long time, because if James was at the point of now cleaning the gun on the video, then Dylan would have already been killed. Or it's possible maybe James decided to film himself cleaning up the crime for whatever reason, which would just be really creepy and sadistic, not to mention completely stupid on his part. But I think it's more likely that the phone accidentally started filming and James didn't even notice. Maybe when he found that phone lying somewhere and realized it was filming, he couldn't figure out how to delete the video, so that's when he just decided to chuck it and ditch it in the pond rather than leaving it in Dylan's truck or returning it to his RV. I don't know. Another thought I had was that maybe somebody was with James and decided to turn on the camera in case he ever tried to spin it around and point fingers at somebody else for the crime. Then that person would have proof that James was the one who did it and cleaned it up. However, in the statement, it does say that the evidence points to him doing this alone. I just find it so difficult to believe that James, being an old, out-of-shape alcoholic, was able to move Dylan and lift him into the truck by himself. Unless he dismembered him or something, I don't know. I don't even want to think about that, but according to the statement, he did do it alone. So hopefully we will learn later how he was able to do that. This really has me wondering how much more footage they actually have from Dylan's phone. I sort of doubt that the phone just randomly started filming right when he happened to be cleaning the gun, so what else could it have captured? I wonder if it's possible that there is video or audio of the crime itself taking place, and maybe one day we will have definitive answers as to what actually happened to Dylan. For so long, all we have had is theories, and even this evidence paints a picture of what more than likely happened, but maybe the footage will have everything. I don't know, who knows? However, if that were the case, I'm not sure there would even need to be a trial. East Idaho News stated that in Utah, if someone is arrested and charged over the weekend, then they almost always will have their first court appearance on the following Monday. At the first appearance, James will be informed about his right to counsel, which due to his income will more than likely be a public defender. If I remember correctly, he may already have an attorney for the charges that he had while he was in jail originally, so I'm not sure if he will have to get a different one for this case or how that works. But next, he will be formally read his charges, and according to the Utah criminal process, since this is a felony case, a date should be set for a preliminary hearing. However, a preliminary hearing is typically when the prosecution presents probable cause, but since they have already done that, this appearance may serve as the preliminary hearing and initial arraignment where James Brenner will need to enter a plea. Assuming Brenner pleads not guilty, then a pre-trial conference and a trial date will be set, but as we've seen, many times those dates are changed for various reasons. All that being said, this is more than likely just the beginning. It's taken 9 months to get here, and James Brenner doesn't really seem like the kind of guy to just admit anything or take accountability for his actions, so I'm sure that we will have a long road ahead of us to get justice for Dylan. Now, don't get me wrong, I am hoping that James will find a glimmer of humanity in his heart and just confess, but more importantly, tell Candace and Justin where he put their son, so that they can finally bring him home and lay him to rest. But honestly, I'm not holding my breath on that one unless he is offered some sort of deal. That is where we are with all of the new information, and I'm really interested to know what you guys think, especially those who have been following this case so closely. If you've been following from the very beginning, I'm sure that you share my feelings of relief when I heard that James Brenner had finally been charged. Excited isn't the right word, since obviously this is an extremely sad situation, but it does feel like a huge step forward. When Candace was asked about if she could think of a possible motive, she shared what many people have speculated, that this wasn't premeditated, and that there really was no motive. James Brenner is just an extremely violent, compulsive person with explosive anger issues and alcohol issues. It was probably just a snap decision, and he has been known to shoot people who have driven on the property before, even though it wasn't even his property to protect.
I'm Tamara Vaifanua. Thank you for joining us tonight. A day after formal murder charges were filed in her son's disappearance, Dylan Round's mother is speaking out about the last 9 months. News specialist Lad Egan spoke with her. He joins us live with more on her reaction. Lad?
Yeah, Tamara, Dylan Round's mother said this was a win for her son to see charges being filed. She said that her son was a hard worker with dreams of being a big farmer, only to vanish from a tiny desert town on the Utah-Nevada border last May.
Knowing who our son was, knowing what he would do in our position is what has kept me going forward.
Dylan Round's mother says the last 9 months have been a difficult, frustrating roller coaster.
We knew the first day we got out there when we seen Dylan's boots what happened. For us, this is a win. We have fought so hard for charges.
Candace Cooley's 19-year-old son has been missing since last May from the small town of Lucin in Box Elder County. On Friday, prosecutors announced aggravated murder charges against 59-year-old James Brenner, who is already in custody on unrelated charges.
This is good news. We don't have a conviction and we don't have Dylan's body, but we won the first battle.
Court documents say DNA, cell phone records, and a recovered video led to the charges. Cooley calls it solid evidence.
If a jury doesn't convict him, I will be absolutely shocked.
She pushes back at descriptions that Brenner was a family friend, saying that was not the case. When asked about a possible motive,
it's not premeditated. There's no motive. There's no nothing. It was a snap moment.
As for what's next, Cooley says she's confident that her family, along with volunteers, will find Dylan's body.
So when the weather breaks and we can get out there, and if some sort of deal hasn't been cut and we're still facing trial, we will spend the whole summer out there finding our son, and we will find him.
Cooley says she will keep on fighting for her son, and she wants to keep Dylan's name alive by helping other victims' families who may not be able to drop everything and advocate for their missing child. Dylan was 19 when he went missing, but Tamara, his mom tells me that one of his birthdays has come and gone since his disappearance, and he would now be 20. She says that they will keep us updated when they start searching for his body. Back to you.
Thank you for that report, Lad.
He is just a grumpy, old, miserable man, and honestly, probably couldn't stand someone like Dylan, a young, vibrant, and hardworking kid with potential, and his whole life ahead of him, not out pursuing, but like outperforming any dreams that James ever had himself. Now, one thing that has always bothered me about this case is that he wasn't even supposed to be there. He already had a warrant out for his arrest, and this entire thing could have been prevented if the Box Elder Police Department would have just done their jobs and arrested him. He would have never had the opportunity to kill Dylan if he were in jail for attacking another man with that chair just weeks before. And how they just sat there and watched him clean out the grain shed, getting rid of so much potential evidence while he still had a warrant. If I feel this angry towards them, I can't imagine how Dylan's parents, Candace and Justin, feel. The Box Elder Police Department did not take them seriously at all from the beginning, and you can imagine how this would have all played out if Candace hadn't reminded them about the boots just sitting in their car and then demanded that they be tested. Those boots are clearly a huge piece of evidence in this case, and it's just one more thing that Box Elder almost screwed up if it weren't for Dylan's parents. A missing person's parents should never have to take the lead in their own child's investigation. And I know in the press release they did thank the Rounds family for their contributions, but it really seems like they are just patting themselves on the back for a stellar investigation when it really was like pulling teeth to get them to even be serious about this case in the beginning. I almost feel like they had to give themselves more credit in the probable cause statement, because if they admitted to how everything actually went down, the defense might be able to use that and say that the investigation was botched and that the police department is incompetent and that there were holes throughout. So I will give them credit for being able to recover the videos off Dylan's phone, but with things like the cloud, I wonder how long it actually took for them to get that video. I'm honestly curious to know how long a forensic download takes, because you'd think that if they got that video months ago, why did it take so long to charge James Brenner? And DNA from the boots and James' shirt all seems like evidence that would have come back relatively quickly. So I don't know about you, but in my opinion, it seems like this case may have been able to have been solved a long time ago, unless there is something major that they are still keeping close to the vest, which, it is possible. Like Candace said, now that James Brenner had been arrested, their main focus is going to be finding Dylan after the winter and the snow lets up. But I really am hoping that James will just man up and tell this family where Dylan is. He's caused them enough pain. The least he can do is allow them to properly bury their son. Candace and Justin have mentioned before that they haven't even been able to grieve yet, 9 months later, because they just kept themselves focused on getting an arrest and finding Dylan.
You look back through Brenner's history, everything's a snap moment.
Cooley says her family has still not had time to grieve, as charges being filed was just one battle. The next, finding Dylan's body.
We're remaining on our focus to find Dylan and to bring Dylan home, and so those emotions are still put to the side right now. We will be out there. We will spend our full summer out there. If he doesn't tell us where Dylan is, we will have a base camp, and we have people, elite teams across the country that will come help us. We will go find Dylan.
I can't imagine how hard this has been on not only them, but Dylan's siblings as well. Through all of this, Candace has found purpose in creating Dylan's legacy, which will provide assistance and guidance to families with a missing loved one, because even with victim advocates, there was still so much they didn't know and so much that they had to learn the hard way. If one positive thing has come from this situation, it will definitely be Candace and her drive to help parents in similar situations, because no one could ever understand more than someone who has already been through it.
So, as I mentioned, it's been 9 months. What is it like, Justin? I mean, going that in 3 months, it'll be a year since you've last seen your son.
It doesn't even seem real. Well, I'm from this area, and I know a fair amount of people, and everybody will ask me if I know anything new, and I don't even really know what to tell them, because I don't know what's even really going on. But it doesn't even seem real. I just be sitting there some nights and just all of a sudden feel like a kick in the gut and realize what's happening, that he's gone, and I don't even know how to explain it.
Well, I think I can kind of speak for both of us in a little bit of the sense that we haven't been able to step back and fully take it in. because we've had a fight on our hands. So we haven't been able to put on the mom and dad emotion hat. We've put on the fight for your child hat. So we truly haven't got to take the time to figure those emotions out yet because we've been so busy fighting. So hopefully that's come to an end, and then, you know, we can go through those emotions. And with our other kids too, I mean, they're just like us. They're, you know, they're standing strong and they don't know what to think. None of us do. We haven't been through this.
Yeah.
When you see some of these other cases nationwide where it takes 20 or 30 years
yeah.
before they find a body or get a confession or find DNA, I mean, I'm sure that's hard to think about, but maybe optimistic in a way that they are getting closed.
Yeah, there is some optimism.
Yeah.
After a 9-month standstill, I am so happy that this case will finally get moving forward so that justice can be served for Dylan. Like I mentioned, James Brenner's first court appearance will likely be early this week, which if that has already passed, I will make sure to quickly do a follow-up video on here to keep you updated about that as well. We've been following this case from the very beginning, guys, and I think although we're moving forward, I think we are just scratching the surface. What else is in that phone? What else is in that video? Are there text threads between James and Dylan where it shows any sort of hostility between the two of them? I think that there is going to be a lot more to unpack. So I will be following along very closely. If you want to follow along closely as well, make sure to just quickly right now, pause for a quick second. You don't even actually have to pause the video. Just hit that subscribe button below. Totally free to do. It just will make sure that my videos pop up in your YouTube feed when you sign on so that you don't miss any updates in this case. And guys, I want to know from you in the comments, do you truly think that James did this alone? I still can't shake the feeling that Dawn was somehow involved, whether it was the disposal, the cleanup, the aftermath. I just don't know how James executed this whole thing on his own. Do you think he did it with help or alone? Let me know in the comments. And as always, if you want faster, quicker, off-the-cuff updates for all cases, make sure you're following along on my Instagram @_AnnieElise, because it is so easy for me to just hop on there really quickly, you know, minute by minute, giving you case updates. But I always will circle back here on YouTube and give you the full breakdown. All right, guys, let's hope that this arrest sticks, that the charges stick, that there's a conviction, and that we get answers for Dylan. Just 19 years old, driven, excited about the future, planning his future. And this old, grumpy, almost 60-year-old, disgusting man thinks he is entitled to snuff that life out. Why? It's so infuriating. So please leave your supportive comments for Justin and Candace in the comment section below, and keep praying for Dylan's safe recovery so that they can finally lay their son to rest. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in today. And until the next one, stay safe.